Hello and welcome back to the mini weaving series. So today we're going to be talking about finishing weavings. So this is the weaving that I've been demonstrating on for the last few videos, and you can see I've tucked all the ends in on that and cut it off the loom. So I'm going to show you today how I did that on this kind of brighter one, which is a bit easier to demonstrate on. I finished this, if you see from last time, I've kind of added on this section here, and it's actually exactly the same as this but mirrored or inverted, so all the blue bits in here are grey in there, just because I kind of wanted to finish it off and get it off the loom, so I just repeated the same kind of motif. And if you'll remember, I had twining stitch at the beginning and I've done that at the end as well. So twining stitch is a bit more secure than the ordinary weaving stitch, and that will stop it kind of sliding off quite as easily, so it has a bit more resistance. I forgot to tie these off, so I'll be showing that properly when I do this. Now I've tucked in most of these ends as well. As you'll see, there's only these light green ones left, although when I finished the weaving at first there was ends on each colour. There was two ends on each colour. So to do that I'm going to use a wool needle. And if you buy the kit from me, you'll get this these extra 6 needles, and I've got the link to that kit in the description. But any kind of blunt wool needle will do. So using that, I've decided that this is the front of my work. When you finish a weaving, you could always decide to make this the front, but I preferred this side, so that's going to stay the front, which means that I want to flip the whole thing to the back, and then you can see I've got these left here. Now it can make it a bit tricky when you've got these kind of in the way. It can also be especially tricky when you're near here, so you can always use, on any loom you buy from me, the kind of bars at the top and bottom are adjustable, using this to loosen it, so you could always turn it. You can see this one is turned away whilst this one is turned towards the weaving, so that can help you kind of shift the piece so that you have a bit more of a gap between that crossbar and the beginning of your weaving. So coming back to this side, kind of in essence I usually use one of two ways of weaving in my ends. One way is to go, actually let me put this back this way. One way is to go horizontally and one is to tuck it in vertically. And depending on the situation that you've got, one can be more appropriate than the other. These are not final, so I would suggest, if in doubt, try it out. So I'm going to start by putting this one in horizontally. So I hope that's clear enough. Let me just zoom in a little bit. There we go. So what I'm going to do here, you can see that's kind of coming, it was under that last string looking from this side, although it would be over from the front side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it looped around there, and then I'm going to tuck it in behind itself on some of the other ones. So there, can you see that this first row of green, yeah, that first row of green, sorry, that blue end is kind of hiding it. So that first row of green there, I'm going to kind of follow along this row to hide it behind there. Oop. So you can, and don't pull it too tight or it will pull on there. You can do one at a time or you can do several at once. Sorry, might help you to lift it up as well, because then you get a bit more give. Okay, I think that's far enough now, and especially with wool, oh, I've made a right mess of that. If that happens, don't worry, just put it back on your needle and watch out that it doesn't slip off next time. There we go. You see how I've tucked that in, kind of following how the green went before it. So it's just going to make the green double thickness for a section along there. And that can be more or less noticeable depending on what kind of pattern you've used. So if we look at that from the front, there you can see it's become slightly thicker there, but you can kind of compact that to make it less obvious. And I think if you move the others kind of around to even it out a little bit, I think that's quite well hidden. So that can be more or less appropriate depending on what kind of weaving you've got. Because of the big contrast between my weft and warp on this, I think it's more noticeable on this than it would be on some other weavings. And then once you get to the back, the friction of kind of having those extra ones in there will keep the piece really nicely in place. Which means you can then snip it off quite close to the weaving and should be nicely tucked in there. And the friction, especially with wool, sorry I was talking, especially with wool which is not that smooth and has got a bit of bite to it, friction will work really well to stop that unravelling. And now I'm going to show you the vertical version on this side. So I've got a similar kind of situation, except that on this one it's over that last one. So you can see if I were to take it like, if I were to tuck it in straight away, you'd have a bit of a hole there. So what I'm going to do is bring it round and poke it through there. Poke it through that first one so that you kind of mirror what's happening here. And then what you do on this one is you tuck it in, like the name suggests, you tuck it in vertically and kind of hide it behind that warp thread, this pink warp thread in this case. So that can be quite good if you've got quite a thick warp thread. If your warp thread is much thinner than your weft, then it won't hide it that well. Oh, how have I done this again? Sorry, I'm not paying attention. Just need to rethread the needle. So what I'm doing here, I'm hiding it, and because it changes to blue here, I'm only going to tuck it into the green ones. But obviously if you had a longer section of a single colour, you could continue tucking it in upwards and get that extra bit of security. If you want, you can then tuck it back in, because that U-turn will give it extra grip. So if I tuck that in there, so it's gone up the first row. You see that it's gone up the first row and it's now going down the second one. So if I tuck that in, there you go. Then just check that you like it from the front. So you see in this case, I would say this is better hidden than that. That is more obvious. The horizontal is more obvious in this case than the vertical. But like I said, depending on your weft and warp, it might not be that way. So just try it out before you snip it off. See what it looks like from the front. This one is pulled a bit. This one is pulled a bit too much. So I'm going to go back here and get a bit of extra in. Sorry. So let me pull that and give it a bit of give so I can pull this one towards me. And let's see if that has, oh, that's made it. Yeah, has that made it better? Now it's a bit too loose, isn't it? It's a fine balance between it being too loose and not being enough give. Right, and so you can see that with that U-turn at the top and it going up and down again, you've got plenty of friction to keep it in place. And I snip it off. And there you go, that's the back. So you can see this more on the back. So again, if you want it to be reversible, maybe you're better off hiding it horizontally. So it's really up to you. And there you go, that's the green ones all tucked in. We'll cut this piece off the loom in the next video. Thanks. Bye.